Well met, lords and ladies, Jacob Butter speaking, and a warm welcome to this week's Walking Wednesday. I'm in a different area this time, reason being that I actually start a new job tomorrow and I needed to find out the location of it, so I decided to scope it out. And you're wondering, oh well, why did I wait until the last day to do that? Well, I wasn't originally going to, but I was convinced that going around in the snow would have been a terrible idea for yesterday, and for the day before, something else happened. I forgot exactly what it was, but yeah, needless to say, I was very determined to just make sure that not only would I be able to find the location, but also a place to park in said location, which I believe I did. I'm not really. Something about it seems almost too good to be true. Because I was half expecting, oh okay, well it's like with rehearsing for the pantomime, where which I'll also be doing today, by the way. So not driving for me, but I thought it was going to be like that, where it would just be, oh well, I'll find a place just on the side of like one of these roads, and if it's just on the side here, I'll maneuver my way out as best I can. No, there was a parking area with no visible restrictions on it, but just parking bays with a bunch of empty spaces. So again, it almost seems too good to be true. So, but yeah, I don't really know. I almost asked one of the locals if it was actually okay in the first place, but they were all wearing headphones, just walking around wearing headphones and mind their own business. One of them was on a call, actually, that I nearly asked. Apparently going away somewhere in January, that's all I cared to listen into. And not to mention, look at this area here for walking purposes. I mean, I'm not going to be in this area on Wednesdays aside from today, because it's because again it's a consistent weekly thing, and then I'm in other places on other days, so I'll be doing more recon missions, let's say. But hey, it worked out, quite the treat. A little bit of a late Three Kings Day present, let's say. Happy belated Reyes to everyone. Because I mean, this year Christmas Eve and Christmas Day coincided, and it turns out I just fully missed the Cabalgata de Reyes a couple of days ago, and it was my own stupid fault, as Eric Morecambe would say, because yeah, I thought to myself, okay, I'm gonna pick something from because Gacha Fest is back in the conversation again. I forgot about the fact that there was going to be a round 2 to decide the nominations for different things, and so there were most of which I've already seen in round 1, but there are a couple of ones in there, especially ones that made into the movie category, that I will probably be sitting down and watching in my own time. But if I thought, okay, well, I'm going to pick something from here. I've had a couple of days of, freedom when it comes to picking stuff that wasn't on the Gacha Fest playlist itself, or the original one, because that's a shortened one now. So I'll select something in here. Let's see what made it into round 2, and then I happen to pick the fated conversation topic for today, and that is. I believe that to paraphrase the title was that the alpha male Rizzler goes to an all-human girl school. Again, specifying human girl because it turns out that the main character was a wolf. So we're going into the erroneous science of the ABO community, let's say. Which, if you don't know what that means, probably lost about half of you that are watching that are my family members. Good. Don't Google it. As for the rest of you, you can probably tell the idea of where it was going to go. And I did say it had potential. This was an entry for the best comedy category, incidentally. it had some potential because you introduce the main character of this story, and you know, and the main character is, in his own words, you know, I see probably like a good use of narration actually, because it characterizes him and actually shows, you know, that he's very confident and very much about to be, you know, over his limit, over his head, basically, or in too deep, let's say, because, you know, he says, "Oh yes, I'm super confident. I can rizz up any girls that I want to, and you know, all of that stuff." And then he reveals that he's never actually talked to a girl on account of being homeschooled. So immediately you can think to yourself, "Ah, well, you know, this character who is so confident and has apparently been trained up by his own mother, let's say, to be able to, I guess, embrace this part of his alpha heritage, and then when it comes to putting it into practice, he's had no actual experience, and so completely fumbles the bag, let's say." Which, I mean, say what you want about the homeschool system, it has advantages and disadvantages. One of the clear disadvantages is, you know, the lack of social skills that, well, the limited social skills you can develop unless you go like out of your way to find, you know, social groups outside of school. And a lot of social groups are school-based for kids in general. So, you know, that's complicated. Not to say there aren't any, because of course you can very easily sign up to, you know, to like, you know, after school clubs and such, and meet people there. So it's by no means impossible, but it limits your options. So with that in mind, I guess, you know, this kid has never, I guess, partaken in any of those. On, again, by his own words, it seems like he hasn't. So, you know, you would think, okay, well, once you get to the actual school, is the and apparently his you know, his genetics kick in, so to speak. You actually then you realize, like, oh, wait a minute, this is not going to work out. This is not what I expected. Again, all of that sounds fantastic. Unfortunately, you kind of have to pair it up with, you know, the other students being, you know, all over him immediately, and him not recognizing there's a difference, or whenever he reacts like he's shocked, it's very subdued, partly because of the voice acting, partly because of just in general, and it doesn't really go anywhere in terms of its concept. It becomes a case of the girls competing for his affections, and that's it. You know, he becomes kind of like the it becomes that kind of like, you know, the well, I mean, he's objectified basically. It becomes the object piece in his own story. So yeah, again, you know, so one of the things where if you reverse the genders, you realize the issue and the agency that's being denied of this protagonist. But, you know, of course, I don't blame anyone for not noticing that in this particular video, because I have ignored something very blatant, and that is that I recognize this road, actually. I feel like I've been down here before on a previous Walking Wednesday. I think on one of my exceptionally long walks, let's say. Exceptionally, why'd I say that? It's a weird phrase. Yeah, so I don't know. But yeah, I'm ignoring the fact that the entry, of course, was the best comedy. So how does it do when it comes to its comedy? Well, you know, the loud equals funny debate is something that that is quite common anyway. But beyond that point, it seems to try to it much like with like Whiz Gaming from I guess like a generation before in terms of gacha stuff. A lot of it is it's just crammed so full of humor that the storyline that we're supposed to be following is completely destroyed in the process. And maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why they don't focus on it so much. You're supposed to just be laughing at the situation, and that's it. Personally, I think that the best comedies are able to do both of those things. Even if it is, there's a simple sketch, which this wasn't, incidentally. So, when I think about it, there aren't that many gacha comedy sketches that aren't ones that are, you know, remastered audio from other YouTube sketches. Might be a bit of an untapped market there for anyone watching this. Okay. It appears I've reached the road. And oh, have I reached it. So I'm going to turn around. I don't want to... Yeah, I'm not going to try and navigate that. But yeah, speaking of comedy sketches, Bon actually made a fantastic observation that that the use of Vine Boom particularly seems to be the modern day, the Gen Alpha actually, equivalent of canned laughter. Except for this Vine Boom was used after something had actually happened already, and it wasn't. Obviously, canned laughter has to react to the audience, obviously, but yeah. And it was also used for shock value. Whenever a character swore, you know, that was when the boom was actually played. Which, you know, again, even then, fine on its own. But then you have the accompanying images over the top of it that are only on for a few seconds, which, you know, again, fine, the brain compresses that. It's like the solar flare in Team 4 stuff. You know, they do that. But then you also have on top of that, sometimes the pictures had text. Pretty sure like a bunch of the ones from of Wolf Sonic had the words "Hear Me Out" on it, which the first time in isolation was kind of funny because we sent that to KW. But yeah, the whole way through, especially if characters were swearing up a storm and that being like the joke itself, the fact that they were swearing. Yeah, it lost its luster quickly the more that it tried to build up on the funny aspects. And I feel like if you have to build up so many different things on top of the already existing joke just to make it funny, you might just want to write a different joke. So, with that in mind, the canned laughter comparison is actually a bit more apt than perhaps Bond realizes, considering that you know, for older TV shows, they actually hired a person who invented the whole concept of canned laughter in the first place to actually because there was like a whole big machine of different reactions for different bits. That's why you can always hear like the same ones in the first place. You know, if you have a studio audience, that's usually an attempt to either save on having to hire the guy, or, you know, to try to make it seem more natural. Which again, works when your show is funny and people can react to it accordingly. I always wonder if they actually do like retakes or something when they're filming in front of the studio audience. Do they get the same laughter as before? Or do they just encourage the audience with an applause-o-meter or something like that? Or a laughter-o-meter, whatever they call it. I don't actually know. It's one of those things that I wonder with shows like Red Dwarf that clearly have bloopers behind them, but they also have moments where, you know, even nowadays, where they will like keep the studio audience's reactions to stuff, like the time that Norman Lovitz came back to reprise his role as Holly that he hadn't done for about like 30 years or something in Red Dwarf and the Promised Land. And yeah, that was a huge deal at the time. And then, but I wonder if I guess they might have like kept the audio from the first time that was happening. I'm not sure. Behind the editing room, I'm sure they worked that out. But yeah, and nowadays, of course, again, Vine Boom, they're controlled by the person. It's all edited and done in post for an internet audience. The difference, I guess, is like canned laughter, you know, is always meant to like invite somebody in. You know, we all rejoice with the idea of joint laughter. It's not to make the joke seem funnier necessarily. It's to is to emphasize people are laughing with you. And that's why watching TV with other people is, so good, or why people still go to the cinema despite the fact you can't talk in there, but you still have a combined and shared experience with people, or something to that effect. And then have a conversation or topic to actually talk about afterwards, and yeah, a lot of that. But yeah, guess with the Vine booms, they did it. I mean, Ghosty said that they didn't originate on Vine specifically, despite the name. Although she did just say they would try to emphasize comedy, which we know that was the whole point. But even if they didn't originate from Vine, much like how the Wilhelm scream was not originally applied to the Wilhelm character, it was used once before in a movie, but it didn't get its fame until later. Yeah, much like that, even if they didn't originate from Vine, the fact that it's associated from Vine is usually fine, because, Vine videos were, by their nature, 6 seconds long. So they were okay to they just like hear it once to emphasize like a point of either the humor or the shock, because a lot of the humor does come from something shocking that you're either not expecting or you fully are expecting because of the title, but the character in the video isn't, whatever it might be. But yeah, now that's been extended into long form content, I think that's the real issue, is that you're applying this thing for long form content that originated from short form content, was popularized by the new app that is famous for short form content, be it that being TikTok, and you're moving it to an environment where it's not the same, but all in an attempt to, I guess, again, capture people's attention spans if they're getting lost with what's going on. Dare I suggest that if they're being lost at what's going on in the video, it's because the story isn't strong enough. Because I mean, sensory overload aside, both Bon and Ghosty on that video, mentioned that they were kind of like drifting away, so to speak. This was was that they were not being enticed at all. In fact, Bond shut down in terms of the dialogue a number of times. Ghosty got sensory overloads, which again also makes a lot of sense if you've seen the video. But yeah, it's a thing again that comes from short form content, because with shorts, if you cram in a bunch of humor to them, again, it's one of those where someone can either, it will loop and replay, because that's what shorts will do automatically in most apps nowadays, or they will, I guess, if you don't want to go back and re-engage with it, if it's too much, even by short standards, you can just scroll away and move on. There's not enough time to make a story that's, that grabs you in that same way, like long form content does. But they should have been treated the same way. It's not a, whether or not you think there's like this method of humor is flawed anyway, because it's trying to capture and jingle keys in front of people in the first place. Whether or not you think that's just a terrible practice anyway and has destroyed the perception of comedy, as Bond actually puts it, for the new generation, is again up to you to draw your own conclusions. For me personally, if it stays in a short form, it'll probably do, they'll probably continue to do damage in terms of attention spans and whatnot. I'm no expert on that matter. But the conversion for me was the issue. Because again, unless you realize that these two things are constructed differently, and one is not just a longer version of the other, then this is what you end up with. Again, it's similar to what happened with Wiz Gaming, how even like the music in the background was just Wiz doing different voices and making it sound much more warped and distorted. Other than that, think about it, there is actually Element Animation did like a Pokemon parody with the villagers, and with that they actually had Dan Lloyd do do the usual voice of the villagers, but they remixed him into a much more polished a cappella version of these particular songs. So, and they played them in the background so they wouldn't drown things out and all that. So yeah, it's makes sense. But then when Wiz did it, you know, the whole point was like, if everything was like very terrible because it was funny, the fact that Wiz was doing everything was the predominant joke, and the video, which was, you know, already questionable in terms of you know, what it was doing, because that was the Spirit Animal series by Not Zoe, just end up being even worse, which ties to the Alpha Sisters, who also caught this comparison to some degree. The Alpha Sisters are sort of in like a bit of a middle ground territory, I think, because yes, they have a number of characters who their voices are so warped that even in dramatic moments they're trying to portray, you can't take them seriously because your ears are bleeding. They'll remix in trying to represent like different characters, like Jeff the Killer, for example, and which has led to Ghosty mentioning that they have killed Jeff the Killer a number of times through character assassination. And yeah, just in general, you know, the worst example, of course, is again they go back to going back to the Miraculous series, how they mentioned that at least one of them said, "Oh, you know, I hate this series. I want to make it even worse." So again, it's not even being done out of a sense of you know, reverence for the source material, rather the complete opposite. So another thing that's not what you want in that situation. However, they still have some semblance of, you know, either trying to trying to make some sort of like coherent adventure, at least like Jessie Cat does. You know, trying to make the characters fleshed out. They have a whole extended universe. So there are aspects of what they're trying to do where they're saying, yes, get invested in our deeper lore and have a good time at the same time and have some laughs. Whether or not they found that balance, or, you know, whether or not they know what they're doing in terms of adapting things that already exist, is again up to you. But that seems to be where they're going. So, you know, the difference is that they're trying to do that thing and not always succeeding, and the creator of Alpha Male Rizzler seems to have not got the memo in the slightest, at least from what I can tell. But yeah, Bon also mentioned that, because we've talked about the Alpha Sisters behind the scenes a bit, mostly because he wasn't aware of what happened in that Walking Wednesday where I talked about how I lost a role and gained another, right when the pantomime first started being rehearsed for. Actually, no, right after I did the auditions before rehearsals. And I mentioned what went down in terms of making sorry, I thought I might recognize the people in the car there. Well, I've lost my train of thought now. Yeah, that happened with the Panto people actually as well. Apparently I've walked past them while filming a couple of times, and yeah, we've And they came up to me and said like, oh, I saw you while you were shopping, or I saw you while you were, walking past, insert name of street here. And that particular character's mum is also in the play, so she then confirmed that, said what the street address actually was, because I didn't know, because he just said, oh, you walked past my house. Oh, okay. Good to know. Like, I almost said hi. It's like, I mean, you could have said hi, would have worked. That's fine. Again, almost just happened right now. But yeah, what was I saying? The Alpha Sisters, go back to them. They, well, as we were discussing, like Bon and I were discussing this, that adventure, and also talking about the reverse aspect of how, of why they were so cagey around, like protecting their own, because they themselves, within their own fan base, have had, incredibly toxic responses, particularly when it comes to particular series not being updated enough, or people getting really invested in those ones and demanding new releases when they're trying to do other content, because again, they're invested in trying to tell a larger story and make other different types of stories and getting people involved in those, and not being well received, and that happening twice actually, both times when a series of theirs blew up, and then the second time was obviously when the second one eclipsed the other one in popularity. So it continues to happen. And I'm not sure what else has gone on, because, well, first of all, I left the service of my own accord anyway, but even when I was there, obviously the first time people caught wind of me reviewing an Alpha Sisters video was when, all of the, like, ad hominem attacks came in that, that the moderators, including Bon, actually caught and removed. I can still see them in StreamYard, but they're removed for the general audience. And even before I was invited to join the server, all the negative comments about me were purged, particularly because they were made before the review even started. It was just when, they saw the videos, like, oh, how dare this person, call the other video the most homophobic, pride video of all time, or something like that. I don't know what I said. I don't remember what the title was. And then, of course, the guest and I made the case for it, and some people got it. It's one of those things that like that part comes to the territory in terms of reviewing things that people really love, because you're always going to get people defending them to the nines, but also people attacking them to the nines. It's that kind of fan base that we're dealing with when it comes to the Alpha Sisters, and they're aware of that. And I guess the last comparison you can make is sort of a cautionary tale. Now, at the moment, the original, Alpha Male Rizzler video, I believe, like, when I saw it, it had like 41 views or something. So this is a channel that's pretty sure they've just started out, that's not garnered the traction yet that they could garner, like the Alpha Sisters. So at the moment, the Alpha Sisters are sort of a cautionary tale that if you start off like that, or if you end up, going down that deeper path, then you can end up with that kind of fan base that will, first of all, you'll think, okay, well, this is, fine for the moment, but then afterwards can lead you down like that kind of, a path of despair and caginess and, potential anxiety. I don't remember what Jesse Cat said on that particular aspect. But yeah, so ultimately, the type of comedy in the Alpha Male Rizzler video, not only did it not work, at least for the people who are watching it right there, but also, even for those that it would work for, it can lead the creator down a path that's not going to be beneficial for them. So yeah, I hope that ultimately they realize, okay, well, the Alpha Sisters do have something that they're going for them, the story investment, focus on that, pace out the jokes, and if people are invested in the storyline, the characters, they're going to love the jokes a lot more. that's why so many like sitcom jokes work particularly well, because they build on each other over time. Because we know the characters, we know the story, we know what led to these particular situations. Even in an episode itself, you know, that's one thing that the video has going for it. It allowed enough time for a story to be there, even if it's not the one that I actually envisioned it was going to tell. There was still something, but it got lost in it got lost in a loop of its own creation, and you know, and it has all the vine booms in the world to prove it. So yeah, I'm gonna go and again make sure that I can, well, first of all, find my car again, and second of all, find the school particularly, so I can just be like, all right, I can walk from here to here, and have that be done. And then I'm pretty sure I have all of my timings out. Just got to make sure they send me the materials so I can print them. But yeah, for now, please leave a like or dislike, because your opinion matters. And subscribe if you haven't done so already. And on that note, until next time, boom, farewell.